The skies of Talanthra burned crimson as the Leoran capital fell. Bright green flame roared through the air as invader drones tore down crystal towers, their engines screaming louder than the terrified civilians below. Children cried. The elders wept. Priests clung to old scrolls, praying to silent gods. But there was no mercy. The Korath Empire had come not for conquest, but for cleansing. Their voice had echoed days ago from the clouds. All knowledge of light must be erased. All voices of peace must be silenced. And they had delivered on that promise. One by one, city after city had fallen. The Lyrans, soft-spoken, pale-skinned beings of art and science, had no armies, no weapons, and no experience in war. Their greatest strength was memory. They believed in harmony. But in a galaxy ruled by monsters, memory meant nothing. Peace meant weakness. As the last planetary shield collapsed, Highkeeper Valak stood inside the crumbling citadel of stars, hands shaking as he stared at the final terminal still online. The ancient console, older than even their records, glowed with a dull red light, its only purpose, to send a call. Not to friends, not to allies, but to something older, something darker, something forbidden. We swore never to use it, whispered Archivist Jern, standing beside him. Valak's eyes burned with grief. If we don't, no one will be left to regret it. He pressed the sequence. The console blinked, then sent a single pulse into deep space. Not a message in words, but a scream-raw emotion encoded in pain. Launched beyond the stars into regions unmapped and unnamed. For a moment, all went quiet. And then, the citadel was gone. 5 solar days passed. The invasion ended. Moved on to Talanthra except dust and smoke. The Korath flagship, Vornok's Claw, hovered above the ruins, its engines humming like a heartbeat. Commander Vektal, a 3-eyed brood of metal and flesh, stood on the observation deck, watching the quiet planet below. Another world silenced, he growled. Another memory erased. One of his advisors stepped forward. We intercepted a pulse during the final assault. Unknown signal, direction. Death Zone Sector, Quadrant 13. Tal frowned. There is nothing alive there. The advisor hesitated. Unless the myths are true. Tal spat. Ghost stories. No one comes from death worlds. Not anymore. But deep in space, something had heard. On the edge of known space. Beyond the reach of trade routes and starlands, a single structure floated in the void. It was not a station, nor a planet. It was a machine the size of a continent, silent and forgotten, covered in black armor and skull-white markings. It had no name in databases, no transponder code, no registry, just a number, FLEET0. Deep within its silent core, a figure stirred, not woken by alarms, not by orders, but by instinct. She stepped into the central bridge, her eyes dark as a dead star, her voice flat. Someone screamed. Round her, other shadows moved, tall armored figures with no faces. Their bodies bore the scars of old wars, their weapons fused to their bones. They were not born. They were built. Humanity's Deathworlder armada, once hidden now. Awake back near Tillen 3, the Korath began to celebrate. It had sent out signals of victory, mocking broadcasts to nearby systems. They challenged any to stop them. None answered. Until a shadow passed in front of their fleet. At first they thought it was a comet, but it stopped and waited. No lights, no hails, no threats, just silence. The Korath scanned it. The computers. Returned no data, no life signs, no tech signature, just wrongness. Then a voice entered every Korath, ship, calm, cold, and human. Distress signal received. You are the source. Prepare for cleansing. The transmission ended, and the shadow opened its hull. From within came not ships, but monsters sleek. Black-armored crafts shaped like knives, moving in perfect silence. They tore through the Korath like fire through silk. No negotiation, no warning, just pure destruction. The Deathworlders moved fast, destroying engines, power cores, command decks. Ships fell without a sound. Screams echoed in vacuum. Vectal tried to fight. He screamed orders, but no one responded. His ship's systems began shutting down one by one, screens filled with static. Then a human face appeared, pale, scarred, eyes glowing red. "You preyed on the helpless," it said. "Now you face their guardians." The battle lasted only 6 minutes. Afterward, only one Korath ship remained half destroyed, engines disabled. The humans boarded it, but they didn't speak. They left a single survivor, blind and broken, and broadcast him across every known channel. "This is what happens," the human voice said, "when you hurt the quiet ones. This is what you called." The video ended with the symbol of Earth, not the old blue and green world, but a black flag with a red circle, broken in half. The mark of the fleet, of the Deathworlders, far away. In the ruins of Tilanthri, a single Leoran child stirred from the rubble. She looked up at the sky. For the first time in days, there was no fire, no screaming, just the distant hum of something. Massive passing overhead. She saw a ship black, angular, terrifying, and for a moment she was afraid. But then the ship slowed. A small pod dropped from its side. It landed near her. The door opened. Inside was food, water, a light blanket, and a note written in her language. "You are not alone. You were heard. Rest. We will watch the dark." Now. And then the ship vanished into the stars. The galaxy did not cheer. The galaxy trembled, because someone had screamed for help, and Earth had answered. The stars didn't shine the same anymore. Not to the Lyrans. Not to the Korath. Not to any race that had watched the sky for signs of gods or monsters, because now they had an answer. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't a whisper from the past. It was real. It had arrived. The humans from the death world known as Earth were back, and they brought nothing but war. Above the broken world of Talanthra, the sky remained black, even in daylight. Human vessels, shaped like blades and bones, hovered in silence. They didn't speak. They didn't show emotion. They simply moved. With a kind of cold coordination that was more terrifying than rage, there was no music, no speeches, no flags, just purpose. Wherever the invaders had touched the surface, the Deathworlders descended, burning them out with surgical fire. To save, not to protect, but to eliminate Highkeeper Valix, one of the few elders who survived the final siege, stood among the rubble of his ruined temple. His robes were torn, face cut and burned. He stared up at the human ships with wide, frightened eyes. Around him, survivors whispered of miracles, demons, and war spirits. One child called them sky shadows. Another called them angels made of ash. But Valak saw something else. Judgment. The Lyrans had begged the stars for mercy. Instead, they had awakened a species that had buried mercy long ago. On the ground. Human soldiers moved through the ruined streets of the capital. They didn't speak to the Lyrans. They didn't stop to explain. They scanned buildings, destroyed anything still glowing, and marked locations with a red symbol shaped like a broken chain. Their armor hissed with steam, their movements fast and sharp. Some Lyrians tried to thank them, but the humans didn't respond. Their helmets had no faces, only dark glass and breathing filters. They looked like ghosts in metal. One Leoran, boy, barely older than 10, followed a squad through the rubble. He tried to ask them a question in broken Terran tongue. "Why help us?" he asked. "Why now?" A human turned, knelt to his level. The voice that came through the speaker was flat and low, not helping, not clearing the infection. Then the soldier stood and walked on, vanishing into smoke, far above the planet. Inside the flagship of the Deathworlder fleet, designated Silent Ratha meeting was underway. 6 commanders sat around a long black table, each wearing a different armor code, but all marked by the same sigil, a red circle split by a single vertical line, the symbol of Earth's last defense force. These were not politicians. They were not admirals. They were something else. It's chosen not for rank, but survival. Deathworlders born of storms and war, forged by extinction-level events. the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever ignored. Until now, one commander, known only as Thorn, stood first. Signal verified. Lyran's broadcast the old cry. Korath Empire responded with planetary cleansing. Population damage, 72%. Civilian casualties, irreversible. Another. Commander Rel responded in a voice like grinding stone. Standard punishment protocols apply. Korath command fleets in this sector to be eliminated. Already underway, said a third. 3 systems purged. The final commander, the one with deep scars running down her jaw, leaned forward. Her name was Sarah, and she was the only one who ever smiled. But it was not a kind smile. The Lyrans. Soft species. Fragile. They asked for help. They didn't know what they were calling. They know now, Thorn replied. Good. Sarah's smile widened. Let the rest of the galaxy learn too. News spread like infection, across stars. Across space stations and fringe colonies, small transmissions, barely decoded, drifted from merchant ships and wandering scouts. Talon 3 burned. Korath fleet's gone. Something black came from the dark. The Deathworlders are real. Panic erupted in certain sectors. The Korath Empire, arrogant and wide, suddenly fell silent. Outposts stopped reporting. Trade convoys vanished. Pirate gangs began deleting their logs, afraid that even speaking Earth's name might summon them. And on a station orbiting the planet Sirakan, a council of 20 alien races met in secret. They watched intercepted footage of human strike teams, faceless. Warriors dropping from the sky, walking through fire without hesitation, erasing enemy soldiers in seconds. One elder, a Galari diplomat with 8 eyes, whispered, "Why now? Why reveal themselves?" An ancient Creel archivist answered without looking up, "Because someone screamed." And the Creel finally turned. And the humans ... they always answer. They just never come to talk. Back on Talon 3, the human cleansing operations neared completion. In a valley north of the ruins, a young Leoran girl named Rhea watched the black ships leave one by one. Her people had been given food packs, shelters, and basic medical kits left behind without explanation. No ceremony. No farewell. The humans never asked for thanks. They never even stayed long enough to be seen clearly. But before the final dropship rose back into the sky, one human soldier approached her. He reached into a small pouch and handed her a metal disc gold scratched, worn by time. "What is this?" she asked. He said nothing at first. Then finally in a flat tone, "It's a coin. From Earth. Why give it to me?" He looked down at her with blank eyes behind dark glass. "Because someday you'll understand what it cost." And then he was gone. Above the planet, the silent wrath turned slowly, engines glowing red. The last human ships began folding space, preparing to vanish back into the void. No messages left. No traces, but deep in the ship's archive bay, Commander Sarah stood alone. Watching old video logs footage from long-dead colonies, lost children, burning cities, memories the rest of humanity had buried. She whispered to herself, voice cold, and lo, we told them not to call us. And across the stars, a dozen more signals flared from different systems. More distress calls, more cries for help, and the Deathworlders, already moving, turned their ships toward the next scream. There were no flags of surrender, no negotiations, and no warnings. The humans didn't ask for talks or accept apologies. They didn't recognize the idea of enough. When the Deathworlder armada descended upon the next system of Korath, stronghold orbiting the red star of Vasax, they didn't even broadcast their arrival. They simply began erasing everything. The Korath High Lord, Rule, tried to hail the strange dark fleet the moment it emerged from the fold space tear above his fortress planet. His command staff screamed to prepare shields. Defense platforms powered up. Planetary cannons spun and locked targets. But before his first words reached their combs, the Deathworlders had already moved. 20 black ships launched silent salvos of kinetic rods. Not missiles, not plasma. Just pure mass moving. At relativistic speed, each rod hit with the force of a mountain falling from orbit. planetary defenses shattered like glass. The main fortress exploded before Yex-Vrul could finish his sentence. His last breath was taken not in battle, but in shock watching his palace collapse into a flaming crater. In less than 8 minutes, the planet was in ruins. The humans didn't land. They didn't loot. They didn't pause. They simply destroyed. From orbit. Drones recorded everything, broadcasting the execution of the Korath leadership to every major hub in known space. And beneath the footage, a single sentence burned across the screen: no more slavers, no more screams. I'm the edge of a neutral trading outpost named Seshra's Gate. Thousands of alien merchants gathered to watch the footage in terrified silence. Ships from 24 species floated in orbit. Their captains huddled together in bars and chambers, watching the recordings over and over again. In one corner, an old Voskan trader whispered, "They left no one alive." A Nari technician shook. His head, not even the workers, not even the cooks. "They don't care who you are," someone muttered. "If you stood near cruelty, they count you as part of it." The footage showed no celebration, no music, just explosions, fire, and black ships moving like sharks through blood. "Did you see the message?" a pilot whispered. That word they used, ... mercy. "No," said the Voskan. "They didn't use the word. They refused it." Back on Talon 3, Leoran survivors began to piece their cities back together. But there was no joy. The humans had left emergency supplies, food, medicine, basic power cores, but no help beyond that. They hadn't stayed. They hadn't even said goodbye. Rhea, the young girl who had been given the Earth coin, kept it close. She asked the elders daily, "Will they come back?" "No," said Hykepa Valix with a heavy voice. "They came because we cried, and we will not cry again." "Were they good?" she asked one evening. Valix stared at the sky, dark and empty. "They were not saviors," he said. "They were a knife in the deep black between stars." Inside a command chamber buried in the heart of the silent wrath, the Deathworlder commanders met again. They did not sit. They did not speak often.
Ow.
Their orders were shared through silent HUD pulses and thoughts sensed. Relays. They had moved beyond words, but Commander Sarah broke the silence. She stared at a list projected in red Korath: strongholds, allies, sympathizers. She pointed at one. This world houses refugees, civilian scientists, children. "Commander," Thorn replied without emotion. "It harbored slaver fleets. It built their fuel." "Collateral?" Sarah asked. "Accepted." No one argued. This was how the Deathworlders worked. Not with cruelty, not with hate, but with finality. In a hidden data vault on Earth, buried. Beneath kilometers of ice and defense grids, a silent AI watched the movement of the Armada. It recorded each destruction, logged each system. Not for pride, not for history, but for containment. A small text log updated. Response to distress signal. 741C. Operation Active Objective. Remove threat sources. Prevent escalation. Emotion. Index. NA Mercy Protocol. Not a Fuon, there was no contact with Earth's command. There hadn't been in over a century. Because once the Armada was launched, it no longer answered to anyone. It simply followed the rule. If they beg for help, they must be saved. If someone silences them, they must be silenced louder. No mercy. Back in the Korath remnants, a surviving admiral named Kelvon received footage from the latest destroyed colony. His claws shook. He turned to his advisors. These aren't warriors. They're extinction engines. Can't fight. This, a younger general, arrogant and proud, shouted, "We must strike Earth." The room went quiet. Kelvon shook his head. "No one has seen Earth in 500 years. And those who tried to find it never returned." "They?" another asked. "Humans," Vaughn whispered. "The ones we forgot. The ones we thought had gone silent. We pushed too far." As the Korath's empire burned planet by planet and other species watched from the shadows, fear spread faster than fire. Refugees fled. Allies cut ties. Empires crumbled because it became clear the Deathworlders didn't come to save. Came to erase threats. And when they act, they don't stop. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. And mercy is not a word they use. Talon 3 was quiet again, not peaceful haunted. The black armored soldiers had vanished into space without warning. The skies were empty now, yet no one sang, no one rebuilt. 'Cause in the north, near the scorched mountains, something still whispered beneath the dust. A human recon drone, left behind by the Deathworlder armada, had uncovered something beneath the ruins and underground complex untouched by the war above. The area wasn't marked on Leoron maps. It hadn't been seen. In over 3,000 rotations, Valix, the Highkeeper, insisted it was nothing more than old ruins, forgotten temple. But the humans didn't believe in forgotten things. When the Deathworlder flagship Silent Wrath received the drone's report, it changed course mid-flight. No explanation, no signal, just a sharp turn back toward Talon 3. 3 ships broke formation and dove toward the surface like vultures returning to unfinished prey. Within hours, black transports landed near the hidden site. The Lyrans watched in fear as the humans deployed a new kind of soldier, taller, heavier, covered in dull red armor instead of black. These were not frontline troopers. These were seeker specialists in tracking forbidden tech. Were they? When fire usually followed, they entered the ruins in silence. The ground shook, the dust lifted, the mountain opened. It wasn't a temple, it was a vault. A deep, ancient structure built in a style no Leoran recognized. Thick walls of alloy and bone, carvings of stars and screaming faces. The deeper the humans went, the darker it became. Inside, they found corpses. Human corpses. Old ones. Dust-dried armor still fused to their skeletons, weapons still clutched in decaying hands. Some were slumped against the walls, others trapped in sealed rooms. Their gear bore an ancient earth emblem, a red sun broken in half, and beside them were machines, massive generators, split reactors, broken cryopods, equipment from Earth's lost generation, the first exodus, when early human explorers had vanished beyond the stars. Never to return, Commander Sarah arrived personally. She stood over one mummified corpse, her helmet off, her face grim. "This shouldn't be here," she whispered. Thorin joined her. Those ships never came back. We assumed they were lost to deep space. "Not lost," Sarah said, buried. She stepped forward and pressed a gloved hand against a rusted console. A screen flickered. Static gave way to a broken log, barely audible. "This is Scout Captain Helreyes. Year 2341 Earth time. We found something on this world. Something that shouldn't exist. They took our tech, our memories, our voices. If this message survives, don't let it spread. Burn it all, even us." The log cut off dot around them. The machines hummed faintly, still alive, still waiting. Thorn looked at the walls again. His voice dropped low. "The Korith didn't build this." No, Sarah agreed. "They stole it." And that changed everything. Far above the planet, new scans were conducted. Energy readings from the vault matched patterns found on Korith, warships the ones the humans had just destroyed. Which meant the Korith had reverse-engineered forbidden Earth tech. The war wasn't about helping the Lyrans. It never had been. This mission had always been about containment. Every time human technology was stolen, every time it was used by others, something followed. Extinction, madness, corruption. That was why the Deathworlder Armada existed. To find it, erase it, and leave no survivors. Sarah stood at the vault's entrance, staring at the black sky. "They thought we wouldn't notice," Thorn replied. "Now they'll wish we didn't." The purge order came immediately. The vault was sealed. Every machine within marked for destruction. Every trace of stolen Earth tech to be burned from. The surface and the Lyrans, they were told to leave. Rhea, the young girl who had received the Earth coin, begged the soldiers. "Please don't destroy it. That's history." Sika looked down at her and simply said, "So was Earth." Within hours, black ships rained fire from orbit. The northern mountains glowed red. The vault, the bones, the old machines, all of it reduced to ash dot. The humans made no announcements, no explanations. No one was allowed near the site again, but the message was clear. Earth does not tolerate thieves, and this war had just become much bigger, because now they weren't just hunting slavers. They were hunting everyone who had ever touched their secrets. The galaxy had awakened a sleeping beast, and it remembered. The Korath Empire had long believed itself untouchable. Its fleets were vast, its science advanced, and its brutality unmatched. For centuries, it grew stronger by absorbing weaker worlds, stealing what it needed, and erasing the rest. But all of that power, all of that conquest, had come from one terrible secret. One reckless act, buried beneath lies and centuries of silence. The Korath had stolen something from the one place no one in the galaxy dared touch. Earth, it had begun. 200 years ago, a shattered scout ship drifted out of the black human design, broken, bleeding sparks, its crew long dead. The vessel had been part of Earth's early expansion, one of the last to vanish when humanity suddenly withdrew from the stars. The Korath found it. They didn't report it, didn't warn anyone. They simply took it apart, piece by piece, studied its technology, cloned its data, stripped its systems bare. That single act changed everything. Using Earth's stolen tech, the Korath built smarter weapons, stronger shields, faster drives. They added human targeting systems to their dreadnoughts and even re-engineered old Earth. AI fragments half-broken minds that became obedient war machines. The Empire rose like a firestorm. None of their enemies understood how they had grown so quickly. No one asked, until the Lyrons screamed, and the Deathworlders came to listen. Inside the bridge of the Silent Wrath, Commander Thorn stood before a holomap showing all Korath systems known to have used Earth-based enhancements. The map glowed red with dozens of marks. Commander Sarah stepped forward, her face colder than ever. They didn't just use it. They built a whole empire on it. They copied it without understanding the cost, Thorn replied. And now the cost is due. Another officer added, "We have confirmation of Earth-type reactors on 12 worlds. Artificial gravity fields with human signature, even cloned Terran code used in their weapon systems." Sarah didn't blink. Then all 12 burn. Number 1 objected in the Vasker Belt. Korath engineers working on their new prototype fleet received their first and last warning. A signal 5 seconds long, an ancient Earth binary, revoked. Then the stars around them went black. The entire fleet, still under construction, vanished in a wave of silent fire. No survivors. Not even wreckage. On the Korath homeworld, panic spread. The royal houses screamed for defense. Thousands of ships launched, broadcasting desperate denials. "We didn't know. We meant no harm. We needed it to survive." The humans responded with silence. Then they released the footage. Grainy video from 2 centuries ago. A Korath noble examining a dying human pilot pulled from the wreck of the stolen scout ship. The alien asked only one question. "How do we stop your kind from coming back?" The human had smiled through blood. "You don't." Word spread fast. The galaxy watched in horror as system after system fell. The Deathworlders didn't negotiate. They didn't invade. They simply removed what didn't belong in the neutral zone of Seshra's Gate. The Creel historian spoke to a group of ambassadors. "This is not revenge. This is correction. The humans believe their tech is a plague in the wrong hands." A Bellari diplomat asked, "But why do they care?" "They left. They vanished." The historian nodded slowly, because they never really left. They were waiting to see who would be foolish enough to steal from a grave. On Talon 3, Rhea sat alone by the crater where the vault once stood. She held the Earth's coin tight in her palm, feeling the weight of it like a memory. She didn't understand the humans. No one truly did. They'd come in fire, left in silence, and never explained why. But deep down, she was starting to understand something else. They hadn't come to save her people. They had come to stop something. And her people had only survived because they were victims, not participants. For now, on a Korath moon, The last surviving engineer who worked on Earth Tech sat trembling in his cell. The human black ships had landed earlier that day. He knew what was coming. Still, he recorded one final message for whoever found him. We thought we were just using pieces, just tools. But we didn't understand the mind that made them. We didn't see the warning signs. Earth Tech isn't alive, but it remembers. And now the ones who made it are here. They're not angry. They're not cruel. They're just cleaning up. He didn't finish the recording. The room went silent before he could speak again. Back aboard Silent Wrath, Sarah opened an encrypted message in old Earth Command protocol that hadn't triggered in over 300 years. A cold voice spoke. Deathworlder. Armada, Priority Theta, confirm full extinction of unauthorized Earth-based replication. No quarter. No delay. Sarah stared out the viewport, watching stars stretch as their fleet jumped again. They built an empire on bones, she whispered. Thorne's voice echoed over Combs. Then let's remind them what it costs to steal from the dead. And the black ships surged forward faster, colder, relentless. The galaxy watched with silent dread as the human armada grew darker, colder, and more precise. The Korath Empire no longer fought, they ran. They hid behind diplomatic shields, ancient treaties, and frantic pleas for mercy. But the humans did not listen. They didn't care about diplomacy. They didn't care who used the technology now. It had been stolen. It had been copied. And in the logic of the Deathworlders, that meant everything must be destroyed in the Hearthen system. Where once a peaceful research station studied hybrid energy cores derived from Earth schematics, the Korath scientists scrambled to wipe the data. They deleted blueprints, incinerated files, and dismantled every piece of human-based machinery. But it was too late. The moment the Deathworlders entered orbit, they scanned the planet's surface, found the buried code, and marked the location with a blood-red beacon. Then, without a word, they vaporized the entire station from orbit. Number. Warning. No demands. Just fire. Inside the command deck of the Silent Wrath. Commander Sarah stood over a holographic display showing their Purge Route 37 systems targeted for violation of Terran Tech protocols. Beside her, Thorne's voice was quiet, steady. Collateral rising. Uninvolved populations are being caught in the strikes. We warned them, Sarah replied coldly. Use what's not yours, and suffer what's ours. They don't understand why we're doing this. Don't need to. Sarah's voice didn't rise. They copied our minds into machines, turned our weapons into toys, and built empires off the corpses of our dead. If we leave even a spark, it spreads again. This galaxy doesn't get a second chance. Silence, and then authorize the Cinder Protocol. On a diplomatic station orbiting Sarakan Prime, dozens of species gathered in emergency assembly. The galaxy was in chaos. Systems were being cut down, entire worlds erased. And the only pattern was one chilling truth. If you had anything touched by Earth, you were marked for death. The Leoran envoy stepped forward, wounded, his voice trembling. We cried out for help. We didn't know they would do this. I tell you now, this is not vengeance. It is not war. This is cleansing, Grelic war leader roared, but there are innocents dying. And how many innocent voices did we silence when the Korath enslaved planets using Earth weapons? The Leoran asked back. No one answered. Meanwhile, in the outer colony of Juno's Reach, once a trading post, now a haven for stolen tech, the Deathworlders did something new. They landed, not to fight, not to speak, but to erase by hand, strike. Teams moved through the streets. Entire warehouses filled with reverse-engineered Earth tools were torched. AI systems begged for mercy as they were purged. Civilian shop owners tried to explain they didn't know where the devices came from. The humans didn't reply. They moved from structure to structure, marking each one with the sigil of fire, a broken red circle. Once marked, the building vanished. In a blink of white heat, when a local diplomat finally managed to beg an officer for mercy, he got a simple response. We burn everything we gave you, and everything you stole. In the minds of most galactic civilizations, this was war. In the minds of the Deathworlders, It was correction. Because Earth never meant to share. Not because of greed, because of something far worse. Long ago, during humanity's rise among the stars, they created weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. AI so advanced it bordered on sentience, and machines that could mimic human thought. It was beautiful, it was powerful, it was uncontrollable, and so Earth disappeared. They pulled back, vanished from trade, destroyed their own beacons, and locked themselves behind a wall of silence. Because they had learned one terrible truth: we are too dangerous to be copied. The galaxy hadn't listened, and now the price was being paid. In one system, a Korath prince offered surrender. He broadcast a message across 6 languages, promising to return every Earth artifact, every weapon, every bit of data. The humans responded with a single transmission: return is not enough. You open the vault, now we seal it, permanently, within. The hour the prince's world was gone. Back on Talon 3, Rhea watched the last human sensor beacon fade into silence. The humans had not returned. Not after they burned the vault. Not after the message was clear. But the elders spoke now in whispers. Not of gods. Not of peace. They whispered of the Deathworlders, fire that walks like men, of judgment that doesn't blink, of a people who had once tried to share their light, only to watch the galaxy twist it into shadows. And now, Earth was burning the shadows away, one planet at a time. The stars had changed. They weren't peaceful, distant lights anymore. They were warnings. Every glowing system was a question. Had it touched Earth's secrets? Had it traded in forbidden tech? Had it whispered with the Korath? Because if it had, the humans were coming. In the vast and ancient Jalari cluster, a ring of 12 planets once known for art and science flickered an emergency red. The skies above them were full of fleeing ships. Traders, scholars, diplomats running, fleeing before the black ships arrived. They had once laughed at human myths. Now they left behind centuries of culture just to survive 1 hour longer. But it wasn't enough. The Deathworlders didn't need invitations. They didn't wait at the edge of star systems for permission. They folded through space like knives through silk. No one knew their method. No one could track their speed. 1 minute there was nothing. The next the sky cracked open, and then came judgment. On Galar 4, planetary governors attempted to reason. Their ancestors had bought tech from a Korath merchant, never knowing it had Terran origins. It was centuries ago. One system. One data vault. All gone now. They sent signals. Please, surrender terms. The humans didn't respond. Instead, small black pods dropped through the clouds, hundreds of them, each one silent, unmarked. They landed with barely a whisper. And then they opened. From each pod stepped a Deathworlder, units silent, faceless, in red-trimmed armor, their boots cracking ancient stone roads. They didn't speak, they didn't explain. They simply began scanning. One by one, buildings were tagged, devices destroyed, libraries burned. Not with malice, not with fire, but with purpose. This was not war. It was cleaning inside the command deck of silent wrath. Commander Sarah watched dozens of system maps scroll across her display. Some glowed red, others black. A few, very few, were marked green. Thorn entered, silent as always. He pointed to a system flickering orange. Unconfirmed tech presence. Civilian colony. Sarah nodded once. Purge the tech. Spare the rest, but leave them a message this time. What message? Sarah turned, her voice cold as vacuum. This galaxy was given a chance to forget Earth. Instead, it mined our dead. Now we remind them what they dug up. Elsewhere in the sector, whispers grew. Ships vanished in the dark between stars. Outposts went silent. Smugglers tried to erase old tech and fled to uncharted space. But the Deathworlders followed. They weren't tracking transmissions. They were tracking guilt. Back on the trade world, a Velner, a merchant named Rek, sat trembling in his vault, staring at an old device the size of his hand, a Korath trinket, once thought worthless. He had sold dozens like it. Now he knew it was Earth tech. He tried to destroy it, burn it, melt it. But when the Deathworlders arrived, they didn't care that it was broken. They saw only the stain. They left him alive, but they marked his building with the red circle, and within hours, no customer, no crew, no ally would come near him again. The humans hadn't just destroyed his business, they'd turned him into a curse. In the Galactic Central Archives, a quiet protocol was activated, one not touched in centuries. The Keepers, a neutral species that kept the histories of the galaxy, issued a rare warning. All systems must verify their tech origins. Any Earth-based design must be surrendered or destroyed. Contact with Deathworlders should be avoided. No transmissions, no approach, no weapons, total submission, or total destruction. It wasn't just fear, it was survival. Because the Deathworlders were not seeking war. They were finishing a cleanup, thousands of years overdue. On Telanthri, Rhea climbed the mountain where the Earth Vault had once been. It was black now ash, and stone, but sometimes, late at night, she heard low rumbling from the sky, like thunder. She didn't fear it anymore. She understood it. She looked at the Earth's coin in her hand. Its surface, cracked, faded. Not a gift, not a token. A warning. The humans hadn't come because they were kind. They came because someone had screamed. And once they came, he didn't stop. Not for mercy. Not for peace. Not even for thanks. Because they remembered, and now the galaxy did too. The stars were burning, not from war, but from silence. It's a kind of silence that follows a storm so vast that even light is afraid to return. World after world fell dark. The Deathworlders, those from Earth, had moved through the galaxy like a shadow no sun could reach. Every system that touched their lost knowledge, every species that held on to a piece of forbidden tech, had been judged. And now, there was only one question left: why? Why had Earth vanished from the galactic stage for centuries? Why had it returned with such fury? Why had the humans stopped speaking? The answer came in a signal, simple, cold, ancient. One last message. Not a warning, not a threat, just truth. On board the Silent Wrath, the final phase was complete. Sarah stood alone in the archive chamber, a vast hollow cylinder filled with data cores glowing faint red. Here, the Deathworlders stored what they never shared. Not battle logs, mission reports, but memories. She inserted the last recovered. Drive one found in the ruins of the Jalari cluster. It had taken decades to track, even longer to unlock. The core's outer ring bore one phrase: property of Earth's strategic command, do not replicate. When she activated it, a projection filled the chamber. Static at first, then a voice, human, male, calm, ancient. If you're hearing this, then our fears were right. We couldn't hide forever. Someone found our relics. The voice belonged to Admiral Elin Varick, one of the last leaders of Earth's expansion, era recorded just days before Earth sealed itself from the stars. We left behind beauty, power, machines that think, weapons that break time. We believed we could share them. But the galaxy didn't understand them. Worse, they tried to own them. We saw entire planets fall when one AI fragment spiraled. Out of human context, we saw a peaceful species turn to monsters after misusing our gene sculpting tools. So we left. We pulled back. We buried it all. But we knew someone would dig. The image glitched, then continued. If this transmission has been activated, the Deathworlder protocol is in effect. This is not vengeance. This is containment. Our technology is too dangerous to share. If you found this, we're already cleaning it up. The final line came. Like a knife. We tried peace. You answered with theft. Now, we answer back with extinction. Then the screen went black. On hundreds of worlds. This same message echoed broadcast in every language the galaxy had ever known. It wasn't a war cry. It wasn't dramatic. It was a death certificate. For every civilization that ever touched Earth's forbidden legacy, in the ruins of the once mighty Korith Empire, the last war council stood in silence. Their fleets were gone, their fortresses burned, their royal lines erased. A single advisor asked, "Do the humans even want victory?" "No," came the whisper. "They want silence." And silence was all that remained. Back on Talanthri, young Rhea sat beneath the broken sky, watching clouds drift past the black scar where the vault once was. The coin in her hand was now cracked and rusted. She closed her fingers around it and spoke softly. They weren't monsters. Now an old and thin figure turned to her. "No," he agreed. "They were what happens when monsters die and leave behind tools." Rhea nodded slowly. "And when we steal those tools, they come back to take them." Valak stared up at the sky. They were not gods, not saviors, but now they are myth. That myth is stronger than any army. The deep void beyond mapped space, the silent wrath, and the rest of the Deathworlder armada turned away from the galaxy. Their purge was complete. No victory declared. No flags raised. Just silence. Just a fading signal inside her dark chamber. Commander Sarah removed her helmet for the last time. Her face was tired, but her eyes burned with the weight of generations. She stared at a final line, now etched into every ship in the fleet. This time, they will remember. And the humans disappeared once more into the dark. Not to run, but to wait. Because the next time someone called for help, Earth would answer again. And they would not come with hope. They would come with wrath.